Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, Never to Be Alone. Oh, hello. I can't believe you are still here. I am glad you are, though. It seemed like it's been a long time, but has it really? Alone in a room with nothing, not even a bed. Just the four corners and the reflective door, and lonely floor tiles. How does he do that? Just appear in my door whenever I look for him. He must be magic. The man jumped in front of the door again, and his twin appeared in front of him. Oh, I am always here for you when you need me. The twin pulled a crooked smile across his face. Idiot. The man always wanted a friend when the mirror was hung on his door. While he was sleeping one night, he woke up to one sleeping across the room from him. In the exact position he was, they had so much in common. How come I can never touch you? Asked the man, hopping from tile to tile. He hopped in front of the mirror on the door. Because I told you not to. The only thing the man considered human would not let him touch it. An awful thing. The man was so alone before his twin came along. He would huddle in a corner and talk to himself. What a silly thing to do. Now that the man looked back on it, the man thought that he probably looked ridiculous. Talking to himself, huh? Why did you leave us? How could you leave us alone? The man dropped his head to look at the tiles. I didn't know that you were here. How could you? When your twin walked in, he forgot all about us. The tiles hissed multiple hisses at once. It sounded like 1,000 snakes that slithered under the man. You are still my friends. Liar. Smash your twin to prove that you are still our friend. The man looked up to his twin. What are you doing? Smiled the twin. He seemed especially cheery today. Oh, nothing, twin. Did you hear those hissing noises? The man was worried that his twin might have overheard the hushed conversation held in the corner. Hissing noises? The twin laughed. Of course I did. The man became distraught. I am so sorry. I did not want to. Please, I know you wouldn't hurt me. I am all you have. The man stopped to think. He allowed his eyes to wander in his twins. They were so dark and vast. I never will be alone with you here. The man knew his twin was right. He was all he had. He couldn't hurt him. The man rubbed his face and slumped his shoulders. I have to think. He scooted around, using his feet to drag himself to face his wall. He felt the cold tiles beneath him, and for the first time, he realized he was surrounded up. What was he to do? He felt the tiles crawling beneath him, and he heard their harsh whispers. He touched the floor. I don't want to be alone. Your twin wants you to kill yourself, whispered a chipped tile in front of the man's feet. What? Look behind you. The man slowly turned his head around to face what the tile had told him. There sat his twin with his back turned and head crooked around in an unnatural way over his shoulder. Watching the man whipped his head around. The way the twin's neck was positioned made the man's skin crawl and his stomach upset. You go. The man stood up and faced his twin, who was positioned with an evil lean and a possessed smile. The man ran the 2 steps you have to take to get to the other side of the room and reached up to his twin. Touched his arm, cold like the ice in his eyes. The man knew it was true. His twin wanted him dead. He was cold. The twin wanted him cold too. The man punched his twin in the stomach. No movement, except the twin pulled his hand away, just as the man did. He knows my every move. What do I do? He has dug into my brain and linked my thoughts with his. The man closed his eyes and wildly swung his fists. until he heard the clatter of glass on tile. He snatched his eyelids open and glanced down. Staring in horror at what he had done, he picked up a piece of reflection up and looked at his twin. The man dropped to his knees with tears in his eyes. He heard the tiles snickering at him from behind. He stared at the thousands of twins he had now. "I am sorry." The man scooped his twins up into his arms, carried them over to a corner of the empty room, and dropped them into a pile. Blood from fresh cuts slithered down his arms. "I will never be alone with you here," and he whispered, and he laid his head and chest across his thousands of twins as one twin dug deep into his neck. The second story, virtual pets. The image that was with Baird. You know how when you join a site, and you know your way's too old for it but continue playing anyway? Well, I found this site called Foo Pets. I got hooked instantly. The puppies and kittens were so cute, and I just had to have more and more. Then came the change where you could only stay on if you paid a membership. I didn't even think twice about paying up. I was told I was a fool, paying for £99 a month for pixels. I honestly couldn't have cared less. I adored the site, and though the admins were tyrants, I played through a few months, kept adding and selling pets, getting more and more addicted. Then I stumbled across a pet that had a very unusual photo. It was taken in the Foo Photo studio, but instead of just seeing the pets, I could see the entire studio, and everything was eerily blacked out. I thought it was fake, but it was in this pet's photos, not on the profile that has legitimately been taken. I giggled with excitement, paid them the $4 they wanted, and brought him home. Though it didn't seem right, he would frown at me, instead of panting, happily wagging his tail. Sometimes his screen is tinted red, sometimes it was black and white. This was a real glitcher, but patches of the screen were. The only way to describe it was it looked like the details had been etched onto black card. It didn't weird me out at all, until I looked at the picture again the next morning. That's when it set in. Why would Rivet make a pet like this? A pet that glitches like this? Surely they would fix him. I sent it through to support, and they said he looked fine to them. Maybe it was just my PC sticking a frame from just after they bark by accident, and the colors could be my Adobe needing to be updated. I updated Adobe and refreshed the page on him. He stayed frowning, but patches of the screen were the only way to describe it. Is that it looked like the details had been etched onto black card. The scarring leaving red marks, it terrified me. I didn't sell him though. I kept him. I didn't want to get rid of such a rare glitch. I logged on the next day, and my top pet's name had changed to deceased. But in the breeding section, the name stayed exactly the same. The next day, the same thing happened, except now it said, keeping me was stupid, wasn't it? As you can tell, I was confused and scared. My screenshots were dismissed as fake by the admins and ambassadors. I tried to cancel my Club Foo, but it wouldn't let me. I tried deleting my account, it wouldn't let me. I went back to my profile page and looked down my deceased pets. I tried to play with them, but they just didn't show in their scenes. They were just empty. Even the photos I took were just empty. Except his. That goddamn dog was still in his scene. The redness had spread over his entire body now, since he was now my only pet. I changed his scene a bit, and tried to pretend he was a normal dog. Tried and failed. He seemed to glow a little in places too. Occasionally, patches of him would flash normal. I kept seeing him out of the corner of my eye for the next week. When I looked at him, he leapt out of full sight, just wagging his tail and panting, but with that weird red effect on his fur. He wasn't doing any harm, so I ignored him. The next week he was closer instead of being across the other side of the room. He stood just a few feet away when I could see him. He took longer to leap out of my vision when I looked directly at him, and closer again. He was practically touching me and didn't leap out of my line of vision. He would just look up at me, as if expecting me to pet him. I walked around my sleepy old town and people would compliment me on my new dog, my Australian Shepherd, Holt Bayard. They saw his coat as being perfectly normal for an Aussie Shepherd. Of course, I named him Bayard because I knew his name was Bayard. His name was Bayard when he was just a fruit. He isn't exactly a friendly puppy though. I can see it in his eyes that the photo in the studio was something dark and disturbing for him. I sat down and opened up Food Pets on my browser. He had his paws up on my knees, grinning. His scene was empty, and all my pets were still cold, deceased, and blacked out. Bayard yipped excitedly. I petted his head and kept scrolling down. Nothing else had changed, so I shrugged, unsure about his excitement. Then he whimpered as I went to close the browser. I stopped for a moment, then decided to browse the forums. I clicked the forums tab. Nothing. I frowned and clicked it again. Nothing. I clicked for a third time and instantly regretted it. Bayard barked insanely, as if trying to talk to the red dog that was against my screen. He was grinning. My red husky was grinning maniacally. I let out a strangled cry, tearing up, trying to back away from my PC. He let out a loud, blood-curdling cry before the entire street blacked out. Bayard's body glowed. At least I knew where he was. This is the only memory I have of my entire life. I've forgotten my mother, my father, all of my family. Obviously I met them again, but they just feel alien, of course. I still have Bayard. His red has changed to a cool blue now though. I kind of miss the red, but at least it's not as eerie now. I know he said he isn't friendly, and he probably sounds like a lifelong companion, right? Eerie is a lifelong companion. He's a tough sticker, and he won't budge. What's so bad about that? You have no idea what this bundle of fluff eats. He goes through at least 12 people a week. It is hard keeping up with his demands, but he can hunt for himself sometimes, though other times he likes corpses, cut a certain way, you know. Anyway, I have to go. Chances are you've read this, and you now know Bayard's secret. I'll be there shortly, or Bayard will be. You're like a big, squealing, screeching noise to us now. We could find you any time. You make our ears bleed, it hurts. Bayard will enjoy eating you. You're the loudest, yet the louder you scream, the more fun it is. The third story, the cage. You awake, you are naked and cold. You sit up and look around, and you see you are in a cage. Steel bars grow from the smooth cement of the floor, and end in a roof of steel bars about 3 feet over your head when you stand. The floor of your cage has a drain in the center, with sickly yellow stains running down into it. From the ceiling of your cage hangs a single bare light bulb, throwing a pathetic light down onto you. For a few minutes, you sit there quietly in the flickering light, trying to know how you got here. You can hear heavy breathing, animal breathing, coming from the dark surrounding your cage. After a few minutes, it subsides. You peer out into the dark, but your light bulb illuminates only a small patch around your cage, and past that is sheer darkness. You see a bucket in the corner, and as you crawl over to it, you see there is water in it. You reach out to touch the water, when suddenly a face slams into the bars of the cage beside you. It is the face of a chimp. It is screaming at you with primal fury, its mouth stretching so wide the corners of its mouth are tearing. Its canines are long and yellow, and razor-sharp its eyes look, as if they have been stabbed again and again, and the blood flows from them down the chimp's face. Yet still the eyes focus on you. You recoil and cry out, pulling yourself into the center of your cage. It lunges for you, and its filthy, overgrown fingernails scrape your forearm, which starts to bleed lightly in the center of your cage. The chimp is unable to reach you by about 8 inches. It beats its arms against the cage for 5, 10, and 15 minutes, all the while screaming in that animalistic way. It beats its arms against the bars so hard that you can hear bone cracking. It beats and beats at your cage until its arms lose their shape because the bones are broken in so many places. After a very long time, the chimp finally comes and jumps off into the darkness. You sit for a long time, listening, trying not to make any noise. You don't hear any more screams, but you do hear animal breathing occasionally, and the scuffling of feet. On cement you stand and walk to the bars of your cage and attempt to see anything through the darkness, but to no avail. The darkness past the light of your light bulb is thick as tar, but as you look out, the chimp attacks your cage again, and you fall back to the center of the cage. But this time, the chimp is not alone. About 50 other chimps are with him, and they come at the cage from all sides, all grasping for you. None able to reach you in the center, but you're unable to move away from the center for fear of being grabbed. You draw your knees to your chest and put your head between your knees. Your tears They beat and beat at your cage with their arms, breaking their own bones in the frenzy to get at you. In fear you piss on the floor of your cage like an animal. For what seems like hours the chimps scream and beat at your cage. Eventually they come and all disappear into the darkness. For 2.5 days this continues. Any time you try to sleep, get at the bucket of water, or go near the edge of your cage, the group of chimps returns and attacks your cage. You are desperate with hunger, thirst, and tiredness. Fragments of teeth litter the floor, because the chimps have been biting the bars of your cage with such pressure that their teeth have groaned and broken under the pressure. Your cage reeks of fear, and human waste. The chimps are looking progressively more horrific. As their teeth and bones break, their flesh appears to be rotting off them, and their fur comes out in clumps. Finally, in desperation, you lunge for the bucket of water. The chimps run at you, and you are too slow in pulling the bucket of water away from the corner. They grab your arms, and you try to scrabble away, but they pull you to the edge of the cage and rip into your flesh. You cry out in agony as the chimps tear away hunks of your flesh. You can smell the scent of your blood gushing along the floor. Running down the drain you sob as you watch the chimps scoop out handfuls of your intestines. And as you watch them feasting on you, black steals across your vision. The next time you awake, you aren't in a cage. You feel strange. And as you look at your arms, you see they are covered in hair, and your fingers end in filthy, overgrown fingernails. No, it can't be. You're one of those dirty, God-forsaken chimps. You gouge at your own eyes again and again, not wanting to see what you were seeing. But, despite your eyes being mutilated and blood flowing from them, you can still see with crystal clarity. You look around, and you see a cage with a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. A slim youth is inside, And suddenly you know it best his fault you are like this. You feel rage build inside you, and as the boy reaches out to touch a bucket of water, you run at him. Screaming, he recoils to the center of his cage, and you grasp for him through the bars. He looks at you in terror, his face tear-soaked. You want him to die. You want him to die right now. It's his fault. You don't know why it is his fault. But you know it is his damn fault you are like this. You want to destroy him, to rend his young flesh. But then you know what you really want. You want to make him an animal. Just like you want to make him an animal more than you've ever wanted anything before.